here at Tannadice. We have Partick Thistle as visitors. A game very important to the Firhill men. As far as Dundee United are concerned, it's equally important, mind you, that they take both points because they're seeking a return to European football next season. And as far as Jim McLean's concerned, whether or not he's the boss, you'll certainly be looking for both points this afternoon.
Tell Gary Bowen get out left when the goalie gets the ball, look for the ball.
I will stand or fall in what I think and what I feel should happen out there on the park and dictate to players and what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And there's no doubt that players are not happy with it. But I'm not here to be top of the pops with them. I'm here to get results.
You've got to look at the success that he's had and say that overall as a manager, he has, as I've said, been the most successful provincial manager in the history of Scottish football.
He really has driven Dundee United. It's been like an aspidistra. They keep going up and up and up, and he's been behind the lot, you know.
Long before reaching the top, Jim McLean started in the middle, sandwiched between footballing brothers Tommy and Willie in Lanarkshire. But it was only at age 28 that he quit part-time joinery for a full-time career in the game. Professional status as a striker accompanied his move from Douglas Park to Dens Park and Dundee.
And headed away on the line, McLean. Jim McLean scoring a second goal for Dundee.
He definitely was a very good footballer. Obviously I'm biased, but as I say, he was a really good footballer. But he didn't suffer fools gladly, even on the field of play.
I was most certainly a forward because, as I said, I couldn't tackle a fish supper, and at the end of the day I had to put the ball in the net because I couldn't keep it at the other end.
McLean's first coaching job too was at Dens Park, but in 1971 he walked out on Dundee and then across Tannadice Street. It shocked the city when he signed up as manager of United.
Any move across to your rivals across the street was looked upon as something that was not done here on Tayside. And as far as Jim McLean's move was concerned, he was recognised by players on both sides of the street as an outstanding coach under John Prentice across the road at Dens Park. But the very fact that he became Dundee United manager, that just wasn't in the script at all, I don't think, in either camp, because certainly Dundee were very upset at losing Jim McLean at that stage.
The interview, obviously, all I said was that I would definitely be making the players stay in Dundee because I wanted to hammer them at training and get them as fit as we possibly can. I didn't like them travelling in the train and Coca-Cola and sandwiches on the way home and getting up early in the morning to come up here. I believe that they should live on the doorstep, get long lie in the morning, and work really hard morning and afternoon if need be. And I think basically that's the reason that they've been lumbered with me ever since.
How long did you think you'd last here?
2 minutes. I remember walking in the door actually in the first few days, and the statement I've always made is that at the end of the day, when I get the sack, it will be because they've done it my way and I've not been good enough. They will know exactly what I think of them to their face. They will not be able to go out after a game thinking I wasn't too bad and somebody else was worse than me. And I've lived by that ever since. And at the end of the day, I've not got the sack so far because the chairman's a dumpman here at the moment and hasn't realised how poor a manager he's got.
The new boss hammered his players all right. A young Walter Smith lost a stone within 6 weeks of his arrival. In fact, McLean left quite an initial impression on everyone.
I can remember my first ever game against Hibs at Easter Road, and coming back in the bus, Jim had said to me, "Oh well, you've done well," he says, "give me performances like that and you'll never be out of my team." Following week against Kilmarnock at Tannadice, I got the real introduction to Jim McLean. Give me performances like that and you'll never be in the bloody team.
Within 3 years, United were in their first final, and although they lost out in the Scottish Cup, McLean was on the right track.
Great chance for Douglas. Here's Dixie Deans. It must be. It's still.
Getting to the cup final was a big thing for most of us. But I think behind the scenes then, those of us who were there and looked at the situation as a whole realised that he was starting what was going to prove to be a very productive youth setup And that was more the basis for Dundee United's success rather than the old stagers who had been there for a number of seasons.
Danny, I can't hear you. That's good, Lee. I can't hear you, son. Let's hear you shout.
United had just 2 S-form players when McLean took over. Millions of pounds worth of talent's been manufactured since.
I honestly believe that if I've done anything well, it most certainly has been coaching, and I love coaching. But the management side of the club and the other side, it has been extremely difficult for me because I just don't like it.
When you say the coaching, is it the love of seeing a player progress? Does that give you real satisfaction?
Well, again, people will think I'm just trying to blow my own trumpet, but the greatest satisfaction for me personally is to sign a kid and eventually see him play for Scotland full international. And that's happened as far back as Andy Gray, and it's happened just recently with Duncan Ferguson, and there's been many exceptional players in between.
He's taken many, many average players and made them into very, very good players who have earned a tremendous living out of the game. And that was one of his strengths, and being able to do that. He was totally unselfish in what he did with me. He used to take me back in the afternoons. I can remember hating him for it, because I was only one. He picked me out, and he obviously saw something there and said, right, Andy, you come back. Well, all my mates were going and playing snooker and nicking down the pub and things like that. I was back at Tannadice with him. He was whacking balls all over for me. I was heading him, controlling him, doing everything like that. And at the time, hated him and thought, why me? And it was only when I left I realised just exactly what he'd done for me.
Gray and his successors all benefited from McLean's coaching skills, but they all had to endure too sharp and pointed criticism. But McLean denies that it's hampered or indeed ruined some players.
Wait up to Jimmy. You just saunter there. You're not even wanting the ball. Get sprinting. That's one of the biggest weaknesses we're always moaning at.
Criticism is definitely has a great effect on confidence. There's also the problem that constructive criticism, I think, can definitely help their performance. And you look at any player, or most of the players that's been here at Tannadice, and if they've come here and been worse players than when they left here, then I probably would fall out with you on that one.
This is the dressing room where for 21 years Jim McLean has lambasted his playing staff. Man management, he admits, is not his strong point. Tales of his temper are now apocryphal, especially after a defeat.
I'm not getting her up, really. I could just say it's what he thinks to you. Simple as that. Speaks his mind, you know, where you stand with him. It used to be years ago, if you said, it was said if you never got any stick for the manager after a game, you wouldn't play the next week.
If you lost, sometimes it was exactly the same as he was when you won. he set a hell of a standard of performance, and sometimes it wasn't only the angry words if you lost, it was sometimes the angry words when you won games as well.
An hour after the game, he's a completely different person. You know that he can have been lambasted at half time and at the end of the game, and you can meet him in the corridor an hour later and you're cringing like that, thinking you're going to get more, and then all of a sudden he'll crack a joke with you. That's probably the funniest thing I've seen from him, is that how he can change personality-wise very, very quickly.
At times I hated him, and I saw him many times bring grown men to tears at half-time and full-time in games I played in because of what they hadn't done and what he demanded. He was a perfectionist, and I think the trouble with being a perfectionist in football, you never achieve that. It is impossible, but Jim thought he could.
There'll be quite a few that won't miss him. Quite a few that think that that'll be either when a new manager comes.
Well, is it more important to be more popular in a dumpling and have no success than it is to do your job the way you see it done and to get the best results possible? I feel that I've had a way working, and that to me has been the only way that I had any chance of getting any success. I don't say that it's the way that everybody should work, but equally I don't think that if I had expected or demanded any less from the players, we've not had a lot of success. I honestly know that we have got even less, and that's the way I've worked, and they can judge or sit in judgment whoever they want.
You are a perfectionist. You demand 100% every time. Is it possible to give you 100%? They're only human.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's the same with the press. That's why I don't get on well with the press. I expect them to be right. And again, it's wrong to expect that. But honestly, if you expect less than that. You will get far less than that. And what you're actually saying to me now is, okay, drop it to 80%. If I drop it to 80%, there's a hang of a lot of time at the moment. I'm only getting 70-80% and demanding 100%. So if I drop expecting something 70-80, I'll finish up with 50. Would have been relegated.
Whatever you think of his methods, they worked and began working for United in 1979.
Sturrock on the left again. Fleming is inside. That's very good at it. United have won the Scottish League Cup. And this is United's first major win in their long history.
That was a big, big highlight for me. I remember standing just behind you at the moment where you're sitting, and the tears in Mr. Robertson's eyes, who actually kept this club going through really bad years with his firm paying the wages and so on, and his face that night, as it was a midweek game, will always live with me, the memory of seeing the tears in his eyes and saying, Jim, he says, I never thought I'd live to see this day. And okay, it's about lifting cups how often as you can, or as often as you can, but there are other memories that will live longer than actually even lifting trophies, although we've only lifted a few. That's one of the memories that will stick with me all the time.
12 months later, they won the cup again, after victory over their city rivals.
Dundee United had actually arrived. That basically was the message. And as far as the Dundee public were concerned, obviously, the younger element, they had grown, been born into Dundee United supports. And of course, Dundee United now here on Tayside really hold the stem and the basis of the supports, the football supports here on Tayside.
Having taken over Tayside, United began their assault on the rest of the country's top honours. In Aberdeen, they found an ally, and so began an era of new firm dominance.
David Dodds, in goes Sturrock. Oh, great ball! United have done it.
Master curling it into the box. Forsyth getting away on his fast track, and oh, big goal! Brilliant goal by Gordon Straffin.
Fergie was definitely magnificent at that time, and I remember he made a statement to me that he says, you definitely need me. I says, what? He says, you definitely need me. I says, what do you mean? He says, but I need you as well. He says, but we've got to keep beating the Rangers and Celtic. He says, and if you beat the Rangers and Celtic, we might win the title. He says, and if we beat the Rangers and Celtic for you, you might win the title. He says, but if we're not together, there's no chance of either of us winning the title. And fortunately, it turned out a quite appropriate statement, because they won it quite a few times, and we had it in 1982-83, I think.
Were you two of a kind, you and Fergie?
No, he doesn't spend money, and he laughs too much for my liking. He wins trophies too often as well, actually.
Do you get on with him now? Or did you get on with him then?
Yeah, we had a very good relationship, actually, because early on, I think Fergie actually gave up his honeymoon to come and be my roommate down at Lars, actually. In that he got married, and he left his wife to come down to the coaching course at Lars. And that's a true story, actually. We were in the same room at Lars. We were in different beds all the time. But we definitely shared the same room at the coaching course at Lars, when we both sat our qualifying for the coach's certificate, and it was my notes that got him through, actually.
Those notes served both clubs well. In 1983, United won the title. In a league decider against Dundee, Ralph Milne eased the tension. Eamon Bannon released the pressure.
This goal would end any doubts about United winning the championship eventually. That is how important it is. Bannon against Kelly. He saved it. That's it, though.
The club's remarkable rise was complete. The pinnacle of Jim McLean's career, he was hoisted shoulder high by his players, and for once they seemed to be united.
Well, actually, it was a worry of where they were going to drop me, knowing the relationship I have with the players, what they're up to. But it really was the players' day.
He was delighted inwardly, and I think if he's quiet, you know that you've done the business and done the job.
we come down here, and I even had a wee drink of champagne, and my mother saw it on television as well. So she never gave me a stick about it, but she allowed it that day.
I was going to ask you, how did you celebrate? Because you are TT, of course.
Well, as I said, that I had the odd sip of champagne that day, but I honestly like ginger beer and lime better.
The championship won, Jim was a wanted man. Offers flooded in, the big one from Rangers. But he turned them all down.
Honestly, people, especially in the West, criticise me for not taking the Rangers job. And their thing is that I think they think I was scared of the pressure that the Rangers job brings. They honestly don't know what it is to stay. It's far more difficult to stay and be crucified by some of the success you bring to the club and come in the same stairway for 22 years, go to the same training ground and moan at the same player, Davy Neary, for 22 years. It's unbelievable that anybody should think that you opted out of pressure at Ibrox or whatever. If I'd selfishly thought about winning trophies as the major thing that I needed in my football career, then there's no doubts at all I would never have stayed at Dundee United. Jock Stein sat in the Hampden car park with me on the day I was interviewed with, going to be interviewed with Rangers, and he was going crazy because I was still swithering. And he says, look, he says, you've won the Premier League, what more can you do? If you don't win it again, then it's not success. I have absolutely no doubts at all that I've made the right decisions for my family and for myself and the type of person I am. I love living in Dundee, and the media attention, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the problems that I've had to handle. And being in Glasgow, it would have been even more difficult, I think.
McLean stayed but seemed to fall out with almost everyone just the same.
In his judgment, Sheriff Graham Cox described Jim McLean as quick-tempered.
The 3-year dugout ban and £4,000 fine was the heaviest punishment ever landed on a manager by the SFA.
Jim sometimes feels the whole world is geared against him. But in fact, you know, he's had so much going for him. He's made more discoveries than Hughie Green. He really has balanced Dundee United very nicely. But nevertheless, he's still this human piece of gelignite. You never know when he's going to explode.
I've been one of many who have come on the wrong end of Jim McLean's lashing from the tongue, and I think at times he's a very complex man. You can get him on a very good day, and he's a very, very pleasant man to speak to. And I may add, a marvellously interesting person to speak to on subject of football. I don't know of anyone else that I've enjoyed conversations on the game with more. But on the other hand, you do get the days when I'm afraid Jim McLean is the Jim McLean that some of the newspaper readers know, and it can be a trifle difficult to handle in situations like that.
At the end of the day, newspapers are your wrapping around your fish suppers and tomorrow, and at the end of the day, that's the way it should be treated. And I've always believed that what is written in the paper should be as accurate as possible. And nowadays, speculative journalism, really, it's crazy. And the crazy thing about it is that they don't realise how many people they upset. But it really has always been a fight with me, with the media, and too many of the heavy mob in the media. And I've come out quite battle-scarred from that. And I don't mean I would chicken out yet. I definitely would be slightly different, but not completely.
The only time McLean completely bridged the gulf with the press was in Europe. Triumph there formed the basis of a second decade of success at Tannadice, culminating in the '87 UEFA Cup run. In the quarter-final came Barcelona.
Tonight. And there goes the final whistle. Dundee United are through to the semi-finals of the UEFA Cup.
This is where you want to play. You want to play at the best stadiums in Europe, and you want to play in the semi-finals of the European tournament. That's what we're all after. And after that, we want to be in finals.
And that's exactly what they did. Borussia Mönchengladbach were losers in the semi, but by the time United faced Gothenburg at Tannadice in the final, they were already a goal down from the first leg. Soon it was 2, this the away score which would prove decisive. It was the Tannadice team's 70th game of the season. They'd lost the Scottish Cup final 4 days earlier, and though John Clark's goal brought hope to United's supporters, Jim McLean's men could do nothing more against an immensely strong and well-disciplined IFK side. United losers, Gothenburg winners, but the Tannadice crowd cheered long and hard for both teams.
I've seen some crowds in my time. I don't think I've ever seen a crowd stand like this for a defeated side. That warms your heart. You'd think that Dundee United had won everything. And why not? What a wonderful performance by the crowd.
The biggest pride was the reaction of the supporters that night, and there was honestly tears in my eyes when they wouldn't leave the stadium and I had to go out and give them a wave, maybe even give them a smile. But that was a tremendous night for the supporters, to think that somebody else again had picked up the silverware, and they actually got an award, as you know, for their behaviour that night. And that again is a very important memory for me, and the realisation of why it was right for me to stay with Dundee United. We have honestly not enough, but we most certainly have some of the best supporters in the country.
You didn't touch the UEFA Cup. Do you regret it?
Yes, I do actually. I wish I'd got my photo taken with it. It sat here, I think it sat in the boardroom here actually. But I saw it often enough actually, but I never even put my hands near it, in the hope that there would be plenty of time for that after.
Superstition forms a surprisingly large part of the McLean make-up. It began as a player, but as a manager it's assumed extreme proportions.
Before matches with United, if he was in a good run, he would ensure that every player sat in the same position that they were the previous week before he would start his team talk. I think that developed maybe around the time that he was winning the league.
It used to be, when I was younger, if you had played well against a team, you had a good chance of playing against them the next time, just because he was so superstitious.
Is it true you've run out of hotels in Edinburgh to go to?
That's a new one actually, but it is true. You've been doing some research actually, but the results against Hearts and Hibs this year will definitely be looking for other hotels again. But we have tried quite a few on the way down there. I wouldn't like to tell you the road we go to Falkirk, for instance, just to go to a winning hotel.
United ran out of winning hotels in Glasgow long ago. Call it a Hampden jinx or just cruel luck. 6 times Jim McLean's taken them to the Scottish Cup final, and 6 times they've lost. The cup is the one prize which got away.
The Motherwell Cup final for me typifies that there most certainly was never going to be a Scottish Cup final in my time, because we couldn't play a lot better than we did that day, and at the end of the day there was the consolation of Tom picking it up. But with my father's death, that's one that it's brilliant that the match was so good, but unfortunately the result went the way that the Dundee United supporters, and obviously myself, we're not happy with. The pride honestly was that what I like to think about was that my father's influence was obviously very important on us all, and it was a tribute to him, the way we played.
Family matters to Jim McLean. Wife Doris and his 2 sons have always stayed out of the limelight, and still do. But all too often, Jim says, they've had to compete with football for his attention and come out losers.
I think I'm similar to all managers. I think we're a disgrace in that our life revolves around the result on a Saturday. But in the later years, she's got more adjusted to being up with the win or down with the defeat, and has now mellowed and got used to what we've got to do on a Saturday night. We used to actually go out for a meal on a Saturday night. Because of the results, it meant that sometimes I didn't feel like it, so we had to change that, and went to a Friday. And because after a few Fridays we didn't have a few good results, I changed it to a Thursday. And over the last few years, actually, we now go out on a Thursday for that Saturday night meal. That's superstition again.
That's grounds for unreasonable behaviour, is it not?
Well, there's one thing certain. I hope she's not watching this programme, but she's probably got grounds for a divorce.
Retirement, though, won't mean a total separation from United. The chairman has enjoyed his time on the board and working with his boardroom colleagues. But if he continues, he'll still have to deal with outside influences, like players' agents.
I honestly think that they are the biggest disease and the biggest disgrace that's ever happened to the game, mostly. I don't think that they're all bad, but there's so few at the moment that, in my opinion, are interested in what is best for football clubs and football. They're definitely only interested in how much they can get and how quick they can get it.
The Duncan Ferguson saga has also hardened McLean's attitude to those who believe United are nothing more than a breeding ground for the big clubs in Britain.
If people are desperately keen to buy players, then it's up to them to buy them. But we definitely are only interested in success for Dundee United, and that only comes from keeping the quality here. I've heard a TV journalist saying Duncan Ferguson should be kept in Scotland, sold to Rangers. Why not keep him in Scotland for a wee while longer playing with Dundee United? What's wrong with that? Are they scared that we actually become strong again, or strong enough to compete with the Rangers and Celtics and so on? Even last Saturday, a Rangers supporter says, "Oh, Duncan Ferguson's got to stay in Scotland." I says, "Okay, no problem, we'll keep him with Dundee United then." He says, "Oh, no, you can't do that, it's too good for you." I says, "Oh, is there anybody else too good for us?" But honestly, the arguments that some of the people put up is nothing short of diabolical. And any player, whether it be Duncan Ferguson or whatever, if they're under contract, they've signed a contract, honour it. And if they don't honour it at the end of the day, then as far as I'm concerned, it is a disgrace to have signed the contract.
Get into the danger area, they'll never get a finish there.
Rain or shine, for 21 years, McLean has coached generations of Dundee United players. Soon his era will end, but can he really stay away from the job he loves most?
I would like to think that he's had enough at the age he's at, and I think that he's deserved a bit of rest and a bit of retirement, and taking Doris and the boys and going and enjoying himself a wee bit more. But in all honesty, I still believe it when I see it.
He will have to steel himself and step back from the dressing room and the players. But I think behind the scenes he will be there, and he will continue to be a very influential person, because let's remember this, that he is the most experienced man in Scottish football at the moment.
What are you going to do?
I honestly don't know what I'm going to be doing, but that's not a worry. I've worked really hard, I've got a good pension now coming out, and financial side it is not a problem. But what I find to do, I will definitely need to find something to do, because there's no doubts that I can't sit about. But I'm not a bad joiner, so if you're needing any homers done with hanging your doors or windows improved or whatever, then you know where not to phone. Don't you show me smiling now.